Palmer Show. You are now listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Looking down the middle of the day. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studios. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Wednesday. About half that work week in the rear view mirror. Lots to get to. As usual, JD Piquel at 1:15. It is a What If Wednesday. We'll do that at the bottom of the hour. Glenn West set to join us in hour number 2. We'll also talk a little Saints in hour number 2. But you may have heard there's some news in town. A little bit earlier this morning, press release was issued from LSU stating that Brian Kelly had relieved essentially his entire defensive staff of their duties. John Jancic will remain, Bob Diaco will remain, but as the statement reads, Brian Kelly said, "This morning I met with Matt House, Kerry Cooks, Robert Steeples, and Jimmy Lindsey to inform them that they would not return to our coaching staff in 2024. So this is something, obviously, that we've been discussing and thinking about since late September. And when you come off the field in Oxford after putting up that kind of performance offensively and you've got to wear a loss, and you thought that maybe there could be some improvement as some younger players grew up and the coaching staff made some adjustments. But the fact of the matter is the defensive product that LSU put out on the field this year was not a championship caliber unit. That's obvious. You could be a little bit stronger worded than that. It was a disaster at times. And I personally thought there was a chance that with a month to prepare and some younger guys getting some more practice time and a few guys getting healthy, namely Mekhi Wingo, that they would come out and play a little bit better in the bowl game, and they did not. Now, I don't think that Brian Kelly had the bowl game sway him to this decision. This is one I believe that he came to at some point during the season. But you realize that you've got a transfer portal window opening, you've got a signing class to hold together, and I think in terms of timing, this is the best time for Brian Kelly to make that decision. Now, from a football perspective, this makes all the sense in the world, and we'll talk about what LSU does moving forward. There is, for me, a personal side to this that I also look at. I mean, I can vividly go back a few weeks ago, and I interviewed Robert Steeples for the pregame show. It was a Friday morning. And I said, "Well, how's your week been?" And he said, "Oh, it's been crazy. You had a baby." I said, "You had a baby this week?" He said, "Yeah, yesterday." And you realize that he's got a newborn in the house, and now you're looking elsewhere to pick up your family, move, and continue your life somewhere else. So there's a personal side to this whole thing. But when you look at the recruiting, the development, the game plan, the results, everything on that side of the football was subpar. They did not stop the run. They did not cover. They were very poor in their run fits and tackling. They did not rush the passer. There was really nothing this LSU defensive unit did well. And when you put an offensive product on the field like LSU did this year, and you end up with 3 losses, that's just not acceptable. So it's time now to move forward and fill these vacancies and upgrade that side of the ball significantly. It's easier to change coaches than it is to overhaul the personnel. This is step 1. And so, of course, Corey Raymond's name's going to come up. There's a ton of Bo Davis rumors swirling all over the place. I don't have any inside information on any of that stuff. Bo Davis is coaching Texas there. They've just been eliminated from the playoff. And Corey Raymond has been let go at Florida. So neither one of those two guys is coaching anymore. We'll see. They've obviously got a lot of Louisiana ties. I don't know. I don't know what Brian Kelly's going to do. Here's what I do know about Brian Kelly. When he came here, his wins-loss record spoke for itself. Phenomenal. He had done a good job of recruiting at Notre Dame. You could have a question whether or not he could recruit at LSU. He's got to check on both sides. His coach hiring has been excellent. If you look at the defensive coordinators that he hired at Notre Dame, Bob Diaco got the head coaching job at UConn after putting together a really good unit. Mike Elko did a great job at Notre Dame. Jimbo Fisher hired him away, did a great job at A&M as a defensive coordinator. He went to Duke, had success there. He's the head coach at a Power 5 program. It's one of the top 15, 20 jobs in the country. Marcus Freeman, he hired away from Cincinnati. Marcus Freeman's now the head coach at Notre Dame. That's a pretty good run on defensive coaches. Now, keep in mind, Brian Kelly's an offensive guy. He sits in the meetings with the quarterbacks. He's involved in game planning offensively. That's where his expertise lies. But he's identifying defensive coaches, and he did a good job with it. And he brought in Matt House, who had been a defensive coordinator in the SEC, who was working at maybe the best organization in the NFL right now in Kansas City. And I thought Matt House did a good job last year. I really did. You look at what he did in the second half, some of these games, Mississippi State, Florida, Auburn, excellent. You look at what he did for most of the game against Bryce Young, against Alabama. That's a talented group of dudes over there. Did well. And I was confident in him entering the second year. And the results were just awful. And Brian Kelly decided, okay, it's time to move forward. So the question is now, who's next? My answer is I don't know. I don't know who's next. I'm very careful to speculate on coaching hires. Like on the baseball side, everyone's like, you talk baseball all the time. Who are they going to hire for the hitting coach? I don't know. You know how many hitting coaches there are? I don't know hardly any of them. I don't know what coaches' networks look like, who they know, whose representation they know, whose dad they coach. Like, there are so many connections in the coaching world that speculating on them can be a fruitless exercise. But I will go to what would appear to be two very obvious names toward the top of the sport that would be big name hires in college football. And I'll give you those two names and why I think they make a little bit of sense. The first is Jim Leonhard. Jim Leonhard was a great player at Wisconsin. He played 10 years in the NFL. He went back to his alma mater after his NFL playing days were over, and he was a defensive back coach under Dave Aranda. And interestingly enough, as I was reading through his background, he actually got that job because Durante Jones left. So it's just the web we weave. But he was a defensive back coach there. Justin Wilcox became defensive coordinator. He eventually got the head job at Cal, and that's when Jim Leonhard was elevated to defensive coordinator. He was a defensive coordinator at Wisconsin for 5 years. In those 5 years, Wisconsin fielded 4 top 5 total defenses and 4 top 10 scoring defenses in the nation. Now, yes, Wisconsin plays a lot of Iowa, a lot of Northwestern, a lot of Minnesota, a lot of Indiana. I get it. But you were in the top 5 or top 10 of the country 4 of your 5 years there as a defensive coordinator. I'm going to pay attention to that. When Luke Fickell came into Wisconsin, he decided to go a different direction. Jim Leonhard was the interim head coach there and decided he was going to move on. So he's now an analyst at Illinois, where obviously Brett Bielema was the head coach. There's Wisconsin ties there as well. So he's not working as a defensive coordinator or a position coach or anything. He's watching tape right now. And he was paid well to do so, and he took a year off. And so what's he want to do next? Well, LSU pays their coordinators really, really well. And you show up at LSU and do a really good job, all of a sudden, Joe Brady's offensive coordinator at the Panthers, Dave Aranda's a head coach at Baylor. You can move up pretty quick. That name makes a ton of sense to me. They don't have any relationship, Brian Kelly and Jim Leonhard, but that's a high-profile name. Jesse Minter is another very high-profile name. Young, energetic, and doing a heck of a job at Michigan. Now you say he's at Michigan. Why would he leave? They're about to play for a national championship. Well, he's not leaving this week. But if you read all these tea leaves, you understand that it's very possible, very plausible, maybe probable that Jim Harbaugh's last game at Michigan is coming up on Monday. He's changing agents. There's a very attractive job at a place he once played in the NFL. You got Adam Schefter, a Michigan alum, who's going on TV saying that the Chargers make a lot of sense for Jim Harbaugh. Oh, by the way, there's rules infractions going on at Michigan. So maybe there's a shakeup at Michigan and Jim Harbaugh moves on. Well, what does that mean for Jesse Minter? I don't know. But Jesse Minter was a GA for Brian Kelly at Cincinnati to start his coaching career. He rose up the ranks. He ended up being the Vanderbilt defensive coordinator for a year. Then he took the job at Michigan. And this year at Michigan, again, a lot of Iowa, a lot of Wisconsin, a lot of Indiana. I gotcha. But number 1 total defense in the nation. Number 1 scoring defense in the nation. Number 2 pass defense in the nation. Number 9 run defense in the nation. Across the board, excellent. If he's looking for a gig because his head coach moved on, that's a phone call I'd be thrilled if Brian Kelly made. I'm not going to go any further down the list because I just don't know. I could not have told you who Matt House nor Mike Denbrock were 2 years ago. I don't know who the Chiefs linebacker coach is. I don't pay that much attention to Cincinnati football. It's not worth my time. But those 2 names, one, because of the incredible work that Jim Leonard did, was a Broyles finalist, and 2, because Minter coached under Brian Kelly and has done such a great job, and I think there's going to be a shakeup in Michigan. Those are the first 2 names I look to from a big picture search. I'm certain that Brian Kelly has had names in his mind for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months as guys that he will identify. But we'll just have to let that shake out. The timing was right for this in terms of the calendar, and it's tough for those 4 men who are going to have to pack up and move their families. But LSU needed a dramatic change on the defensive side of the football, and the first step of that came today with this news. If you missed any of that segment and want to catch it on demand, you can catch that. Hunt on LSU is our YouTube channel. Subscribe up to that. All your LSU football content comes right to you there. Hunt on LSU. Take a time out. Come back with J.D. Piquel. It's the Hunt Palmer Show.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show.
New year. You're looking to make some New Year's resolutions, make some changes. How about a generator? Boudreaux's Electric can help you with a Generac generator. They're a certified Generac dealer, a premier Generac dealer. It means they're in the top 3% in the country. And when they come over to look at your home, they're going to ask you some questions. What do you need powered when the power goes off? Maybe you want to run the whole house. Maybe you just want to run the AC and the fridge. You can make those decisions, and they can customize a Generac generator for you. And when they come in to install it, they're going to have a full-time Boudreaux's Electric employee come over to install that generator, and they're going to do it in an aesthetically pleasing way. They're going to do a lot of the installation underground, use the highest quality of copper wiring and piping so that you take pride in your home, and it's not an eyesore. But when the power goes out, you're protected. Every Generac generator comes with a free 10-year warranty over there at Boudreaux's. Got to give them a call, 225-300-9389, 225-300-9389. That's our friends over at Boudreaux's Electric.
In times of need, get a full list of phone numbers, websites, and other important emergency information on the Demco Stormwatch page at 1045ESPN.com.
Hey, look what I found!
The motivation I needed to live healthy.
My new favorite sport.
I found my groove.
I found I'm part fish.
My second win when I needed it most.
I found more than a gym.
The affordable childcare this mom needed.
Time for myself.
We found our why.
Have you found yours?
Bayou Ford has the new inventory to get you in a new Ford truck or SUV today, or customize your next vehicle just the way you want it. All new Bayou Ford vehicles come with a 1 million mile powertrain warranty. The crew at Bayou Ford is going to do right by you.
Dylan Cruz here to tell you about Six Rings Baseball and Softball Camp. If you live on the North Shore and play ball, go to Six Rings Camps with former LSU assistant coach Dan Canaveri. His knowledge is second to none, and your child will improve and have fun doing it. Camps are held at Coquille Park and Six Rings Academy in Covington with 4 sessions over the summer. Full day and morning only sessions are available from ages 7 to 13. Go to sixringsbaseball.com or call 985-206-9096. Learn the game to love the game.
Was a humid day, barefoot children play, looking for that summer shade. Time just slips away. Oh, Louisiana, some kind of hold on me. Like cypress stumps, your roots are planted deep inside of me.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary, for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected, supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team, and backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded, because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Electricity is all around us, and our families depend on it. Every day is sparked by the power of a cold drink or a warm meal.
On Thursday's OTB, continue to break down Saints Falcons as well as the national championship and the latest from the now insane college football news cycle. Off the bench, 7 to 10 a.m., 104.5 ESPN.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Moving right along here, Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. We head out to the Jim's Firearms Hotlines where we find our guy J.D. Piquel, host of the Hard Count on 3 Sports. Happy New Year, J.D. How are you?
Well, Happy New Year to you, brother. I'm doing well, man. It sounds like the folks in Baton Rouge are doing a lot better after the news that broke this morning.
Bit of a busy news day today here in Baton Rouge. I think everyone anticipated there would be some changes made on defense. How much, we didn't know. Now we find out 90% of the defensive staff has been relieved of their duties, and LSU's going to go a totally different direction. What was your reaction when you saw the news?
You know, I think I wasn't necessarily surprised. I think there was some of a feeling to it, with it being, you know, like, because last year you look at this team and the strength of the team was the defense. It was, we're talking about Harold Perkins and just wait till they get, you know, Mason Smith back in the lineup and, like, you know, how they performed against Bryce Young. And then this year, obviously, totally flipped the script in terms of, you know, it's an offensive-led operation. And you got guys like, you know, Jaden Daniels, winning the Heisman Trophy. And so I think for me, it was like there was 2 different sample sizes drastically, obviously, based on what happened this year and last year defensively. But honestly, I think as I've sat with it now for a few hours, the more I sit with it, I feel like, one, good for Brian Kelly for saying we got a problem, this is an issue, we got to fix it. I'm not trying to, you know, negotiate with, you know, what we have on this roster, our output defensively. So good for him for being swift in his action. The other thought I had was, if Jaden Daniels doesn't win the Heisman, and if LSU doesn't have the best offense in the country, do we see a move like this? Because I think the crime for how bad they were defensively was that they held back the best offense in America, and good for Brian Kelly for not standing for that.
I mean, it's scary to think if you had an average offense this year, LSU's a 5-6 win team because they just could not stop anybody on defense. I realize you're watching a lot of games and you're not locked into LSU every week like we are, but, I mean, you watched some of LSU this year and saw the ridiculous struggles that LSU went through week in and week out. When you saw LSU on defense, what did you see?
I just saw defense, and this is kind of a cop-out way to say it, but, like, just looked very un-LSU-like. Like, we're used to watching a Tiger defense, and I'm sure the folks in Baton Rouge would attest to this. Like, they are the bullies. They are flying around. There's an edge. There's an attitude. And there was very little to none of that. Like, it looked like if you're an LSU fan, you're like, all right, how many stops do we have to get to find a way to win this football game? Is it 4 stops? Is it 3 stops? Because the offense is going to score 40. I mean, are we going to be able to hold, the opposition to less than 40? So I think just the noticeable edge and the way that you felt watching that defense was very much so, nail it and not quite as much the hammer as they've been known to be the last couple of years.
I know that speculating on who LSU could hire as a defensive coordinator is probably a fool's errand because there are just so many options and you can't possibly know where Brian Kelly's head is. But 2 names that I tossed out that I'd like your thoughts on are Jim Leonhard, who did such a good job at Wisconsin and is now an analyst at Illinois, basically kind of quote-unquote taking a year off, and then Jesse Minter, who's at Michigan. And the only reason I bring that up is because if Jim Harbaugh were to bolt to the NFL and Michigan had a big shakeup and he was looking for a home, assuming Brian Kelly didn't go there, but would that be another name that might make some sense? Those are big names at the very least.
No, I love the Jesse Minter thought if Jim Harbaugh leaves. I think that's a really good one. Another high-profile job. You have to imagine probably pays a pretty penny as well. One name that I saw circulating on the Twitter sphere, no idea if there's any juice to this, but what about Zach Arnett? I mean, guy fresh off a head coaching job, didn't really work out. It was just a no-win situation in my mind with what he was dealt with at Mississippi State. I would love to see him get a chance to kind of get back on the horse a little bit and be in the SEC as a DC because I think he's got the chops to do it. I also saw Lance Guidry. He's got a Louisiana background. That could make some sense. But I'm really, really fascinated to see what happens with Zach Arnett. The Jim Leonhard fit, I think, as a defensive coordinator, like anybody and everybody should be after Jim Leonhard. I'm not so sure that he's not a guy that wants to stay where he's at. Because it sounds, I threw his name out there for the USC job and got a lot of texts from people saying, hey, I like the fit, but he wants to stay home. His wife and family wants to stay where they are. So I don't know how much that is or isn't a hurdle, but if you can land Jim Leonhard, like whoever you are, go get Jim Leonhard.
For sure. Zach Arnett interviewed with Ed Ogeron before Ed's last year, and the word around Baton Rouge is that interview went really, really poorly. Obviously it's a new staff, and it's a different deal, but that it didn't sound like that was such a great deal the first time around. So. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know exactly the details of what went wrong, but I don't know. I've heard that it did not go well at all. So we'll see. It is an interesting name. He had a good defense 2 years ago and 3 years ago, and not so much this year when he was the head man. Let's talk a little nationally. Obviously, we got treated to 2 unbelievable semifinals. Your lasting memory of I guess that was Monday night. Yeah, Monday night.
Yeah, I think that the first thought I had was, okay, college football playoff committee probably feels pretty validated. Not so much that they left Florida State out or anything like that, but just that you got 2 really great games. And the largest disparity from a seeding standpoint should have been between 4 and 1 with Bama and Michigan, and that came down to the very last play in overtime. So I think my feeling leaving the Rose Bowl was if Alabama wants to win a national title, they have to be more multiple offensively, whether it's getting other offensive weapons, whether it's bringing Jalen Milroe along. It was very clear once they got back into a corner and Michigan was able to get after Jalen Milroe and they got those 6 sacks, like they didn't have another pitch to throw. It was it's McClellan, it's Jalen Milroe, it's the RPO stuff, but there was never a feeling of optimism for me watching that game with Alabama when it was 3rd and passing. Now, the thought for me watching the game with Texas and Washington was if you're Texas, you can't throw extra pitches to Aaron Judge at the plate. Like you can't give him more chances to go yard. And when you have 10 penalties for 60 some odd yards and, you have 2 turnovers to Washington's 1, like that is the extra pitches you just cannot afford against Michael Penix Jr. and that wide receiver core at Washington. Washington to me is so fascinating because each of the last 2 games, in this 3rd game coming up here, there's been a pretty decided advantage on the line of scrimmage for the opposition. Like Texas was averaging 5.5 yards a carry. Oregon was right in that same neighborhood, like 2 really physical outfits up front. And Washington just totally changes the way they play the game with if they can hit on that deep pass, they shoot you out of that ability to control the tempo because you can't control tempo when you're down, 13 points. And so that was a really interesting thing to watch, I think, for the 2nd week in a row. And honestly, it has impacted the way I feel about this national championship quite a bit.
Let's talk about that national championship. You've got a couple teams from what will be the Big Ten, but with Washington holding that Pac-12 banner for one more game. Is this another one where Washington goes into it as the underdog and finds a way to win?
I'm not so sure if we don't give Washington a different logo. Is that line, what it is? Is it closer to maybe a pick 'em? I think it opened at 4.5. I think we just honestly, myself included, have a hard time getting on board with this Washington team being from the Pac-12, not being one of those brand names we've expected, and just continuing to go gangbusters across college football. Man, I went back and forth on this one for a while, but I kind of have the same gut feeling I had going into the Sugar Bowl, which was I think Washington is just so dynamic. But I talked myself out of that pick before we got there, saying, okay, well, Texas has disadvantage up front, and they got Quinn Ewers, and they got this. Like, I really think the first couple of quarters are going to dictate if Washington has a chance or not. Like, if Washington just doesn't have the ability to push the ball downfield, it's going to be a long night because they're not all that up front, quite frankly, compared to Michigan. But I mean, I think Roma Dunze, Jalen Poles, Michael Penix Jr., they are the eraser. And if that's on that night, I'm taking Washington to win the national title. So I think it'll be close. I think it'd probably be a game that's played, 27-24 Huskies. But as good as Michigan is, I just think there's too many answers in the pass game for Washington.
Is this Jim Harbaugh's last game at Michigan?
I think it is. And I hate that because I think he's so good for college football, and I think he works in college football. But it really, everybody that I've talked to, and maybe you could attest to this too, and I'm not even saying talk to like in the sense of I'm talking to people on the staff or anything like that, but just everybody across college football kind of has the same feeling of, yeah, it kind of gives you a last dance vibe. And I think a lot of people maybe are at peace with that. But, if you check this last box and win the national championship, like what else do you have to do at Michigan? Like, you took them back to national prominence already. You captured the hardware. I have to imagine like the intrinsic value for him on the NFL. I would think with just how competitive he is, there's a desire to get back to the NFL and kind of check some boxes there, being a Michael Crabtree pass interference away from, maybe have another snap at a Super Bowl. So we'll see, man. But I think this is kind of the last dance, regardless of the results, but definitely if they win it all.
Our Matt Moscona was on his YouTube show saying that, throwing the hypothetical, if he left, would Michigan call Brian Kelly? Do you think that Michigan would call Brian Kelly?
I was going to text you about that last week, bro. I'm surfing the Twitter sphere and seeing Brian Kelly's name pop up all over the place. And I'm kind of like, I guess I could see the fit, another big brand, and they're in a great, spot. I guess he's kind of a Northeast guy, and Michigan's closer to that. But, like, why would you abandon what you've got at LSU? Like, unless there's some wild, know that he's getting from anyone in the administration, I would be confused. The pressure is not going to be that much less at a place like Michigan. The standards are still high there. I would stay at LSU and keep building on what you built there. So I would be surprised if that happened, but I guess there would be some reasons that Brian Kelly would have if he made that pivot that would be, just tough to quantify and account for. Are you hearing something about that? Because I haven't heard much in regards to like anything super concrete, but then again, I didn't hear anything about Lincoln Riley super concrete either before he left for USC.
No, the answer is no. I haven't heard that. Brian Kelly said publicly this is his last stop. Of course, you can say whatever you want in a press conference and then do whatever you want. I think that I would kind of doubt it, but I, as I've said to my friends who have asked me about it, I'll worry about that if it happens. Like, I'm not going to spend a bunch of time going through hypothetical circles if that's the case. I think that there's a better chance than 50% that Brian Kelly's the coach at LSU next year. So enjoy the football on Monday, and we'll talk next week, man.
Sounds good. I appreciate you, brother.
He's JD Piquel, host of the Hard Count on On3 Sports. You can find his stuff on YouTube on the On3 network. Awesome, and with us each and every Wednesday here on the Hunt Palmer Show. All right, I asked for a lot of what-ifs for What If Wednesday, which is coming up next, and I got a lot of them that have to do with LSU's football coaching searches, so we'll do all that next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is that website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. How about a brand new customized closet that fits all of your specific needs? You can do it. Just call David Duvall and his team. You start with a questionnaire. What do you got? How many pairs of shoes you got? What do you need to store right here? Are we wearing ties to work every day? How many suits do we need to pack in here? How many people are sharing this closet? All different types of things that he needs to know before he goes in and builds you a custom closet that, one, is going to function to your needs, all the cubbies and the lights and the tie racks and everything that goes into it, And it's going to look great. I've seen so many great pictures of his work at onebathandclosets.com. You can see those too if you head on over to the website. Financing options are available. If you're a little concerned about paying for things, they can work with you on that front. Check out the website. Request that free consultation at onebathandclosets.com.
Our listeners fire off their opinions on the jimsfirearms.net hotline at 499-1045. Keep listening for your next chance to shoot us your thoughts with the jimsfirearms.net hotline on 1045 ESPN Baton Rouge.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary, for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected. Supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team. And backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Electricity is all around us, and our families depend on it. Every day is sparked by the power of a cold drink or a warm meal, a movie night, and a comforting light at the end of a dark hallway. From sunrise to sunset, playtime to bedtime, our team is ready to take care of your electrical needs. Even in the case of an after-hours emergency, the light in your life shines brighter with Mr. Electric.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Dylan Cruz here to tell you about Six Rings Baseball and Softball Camp. If you live on the North Shore and play ball, go to Six Rings Camps with former LSU assistant coach Dan Canaveri. His knowledge is second to none, and your child will improve and have fun doing it. Camps were held at Coquille Park and Six Rings Academy in Covington with 4 sessions over the summer. Full day and morning only sessions are available from ages 7 to 13. Go to sixringsbaseball.com or call 985-206.
Join us for the Thursday edition of Live at Lunch from Jolie Pearl Oyster Bar and Town Square Pizza. More on the LSU coaching situation, and we'll have Matt Humans as well as Dwayne Colucci on the show. Live at Lunch, 11 a.m. Thursday on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Glenn West going to be with us in about 25 minutes. Covers the Tigers for Go 24/7. We'll talk about all the changes going on, not only on the defensive coaching staff, but also some of the transfer portal goings as well with Glenn coming up in 25 minutes. Looking forward to that. We'll talk some Saints as well. So plenty to get to up until 3 o'clock today. Also got a big recruiting decision coming with Harlem Berry tonight, so we'll get to that. I've got some thoughts on LSU's wide receiver play as well, so lots and lots to get to. But first, it's a What If Wednesday.
Time, space, reality. It's more than a linear path. Where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities. Follow me and ponder the question. What if?
All right. What if, first one here, what if LSU brings out the anodized purple helmets next year in Vegas? Asker says it's been too long.
That's from Twitter. Those are the ones we wore that like reflect, they're purple and they like reflected in the lights. Y'all know my takes on this. It's all trash. I hate it all. I'm mad we show up in the ReliaQuest Bowl in purple uniforms. I want the same uniform every single week. No alternates, no tricked up stuff, no changing colors, no anodized purple helmets. We know this. I want the classics. I need the classics. If we come out in garbage in Vegas against USC, who does have classic uniforms, I'll be a sad guy, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Agreed. Doing too much. Today years old when I learned what anodized means. What if LSU had ATM or Texas's money?
So that's A&M or Texas's money. I think it would change. We still don't know where LSU fits in this NIL world. I still believe there are going to be a lot of young players, high school players, that grow up in this state that want to play for LSU and that's going to matter. I don't believe that every single college football player around the country only goes to the school that pays the most money. That matters to some. It matters a lot to some. It matters a little to some. It matters none to some. It's everything to some. Every case is different. But I do know that LSU, in terms of dollars and cents, there's a finite amount. And you've got to decide how much you want to spend on facilities, how much you want to spend on coaches, how much you want to spend on buying out coaches, how much you want to spend on high school players, how much you want to spend on the transfer portal. And so you're fighting an uphill battle against some of those schools because you have less money. I think it's possible that LSU takes a little step back in player acquisition because you don't quite have the funds. I think it's possible that LSU remains right up there near the top of the sport. I'm not terrified. I think it's safe to say I'm a little unsettled by it because we just don't know. But if you had A&M or Texas's money, it would make life easier. It's just like you're the guy who makes $4 million a year as opposed to the guy who makes $150,000 a year. Both of you are doing well. You can live your life comfortably, but the one guy can do a little bit more than the other guy. It's just the way that it is. And I think that A&M and Texas will be able to do a little bit more with their money, but LSU still got that draw of Louisiana and Tiger Stadium and all that I think works. So it's not a great answer to the question because it's not really a direct question. I'll just say it's a little unsettling to think about a future where money could mean that much more.
What if what if Brian Kelly would have kept Corey Raymond?
I think some things change. I think Corey Raymond's an excellent defensive backs coach. I think his tenure at LSU was phenomenal. And I think that with that being said and understanding what LSU's been at defensive back last year and certainly this year, there's been a drop-off. How much of that is because Corey Raymond's not here? I couldn't necessarily quantify that. I'm not in the meeting rooms with Kerry Cooks and Robert Steeples. I'm not in the living rooms. I don't know who prioritizes what in terms of their evaluations. I know that the guys I watched out there this year didn't play as well as some of the guys I've seen over the last 15 years at LSU. I will say that I'm not someone in the camp that says that Corey Raymond completely quit on the job the last 2 years. I know Matt talked about that on his show a couple of weeks ago. I saw a lot of highly, highly touted defensive backs sign with LSU in the last couple of years that Corey Raymond was there. Does LSU have Patrick Peterson growing on trees here? No, but I saw Derek Stingley play really well, and he got hurt. I saw Eli Ricks have a great freshman season. Those are the top two corners in the country 2 of the last 3 years that Corey was here. So I don't know how big a difference it makes. LSU still didn't rush the passer or fit the run or tackle this year well at all. So it's not just a DB problem. This was a failure of the entire unit, not just defensive backs. And I don't know how much Corey would have changed that.
LOL at this one. Hunt, what if LSU contacted you about the vacant defensive coordinator position?
Oh, I'm answering. And I don't even have an agent that gets a cut. We're going for the big salary. And let me just tell you, we're going to be real bad on defense. We're going to be the worst defense in college football. But I'm going to get a nice paycheck, and I'll just tell Gordy, hey, man, I'd love to come back when this doesn't work. But they've hired me. I'm going to go give it a good old college try. I don't even think that I would be, if I was hired for that position, I'd be working long hours because I wouldn't be good at it anyway, and I'm just looking for the buyout because we know it's going to fail. So, yes, I'm very interested if Brian Kelly is listening today. I know he has probably got to run some interviews with some coaches, but if he is listening to the show today, I'm very interested. I'm going to sacrifice the football season for the paycheck.
Hey, man, as long as you make Perkins rush the passer, I will endorse that hire.
I don't even know what to call it. It's like, hey, 4, just rush. I don't even know what the play call is. Just go.
Hell yeah, call him LSU. Last one, not LSU football related. What if Phil Mickelson has been right all along about live golf?
I'm just not willing to give him the credit for this. One, I don't want where this is headed because I don't like the fact, and this is a spoiled brat move by me, but it's just the way I feel. I don't want them playing team golf in Dubai in the summer. I don't want them in Australia. I don't need them to play in Japan or Korea. That's inconvenient for me. It's at bad times. It's weird formats. I don't care that they're getting more money or that there's team golf involved. Like, I like the PGA Tour. It starts on Thursday in America at 8 in the morning and ends on Sunday at 8 o'clock at night. Like, I like that. And I was fine with it. And so blowing this whole thing up so that they can all come back together and do this global world tour is inconvenient for me. So if that's what Phil Mickelson prioritizes, not what has made him rich in the first place, it's in fact getting out there and playing in Singapore or wherever they are, like, I don't like it. I don't need that. I don't want it. And I think that if your grand idea is to make sure that Saudi Arabia owns 75% of golf so that the golfers can make tens more millions, that plan I don't like. That's as blunt as I can be about that. That's it for What If Wednesday. Mario, thank you for your help with that on the fly. When we come back, decision day for the best back in the country. What do we think about Harlem Berry and his decision, and what might it mean for the signing class of 2025 in Baton Rouge? That's coming up next.
In times of need, get a full list of phone numbers, websites, and other important emergency information on the Demco Stormwatch page at 1045ESPN.com.
Hey, it's Matt Moscona. For years, you've heard me tell you about Insurance Network of Louisiana, helping you find better coverage for less money. But it's not just for your home and auto. They also offer commercial property. So, retail stores, professional offices like doctors, dentists, attorneys, clothing boutiques. Insurance Network of Louisiana can find you better coverage for less money. They service the entire state of Louisiana, and they're local. So call today at 293-0450 or lainsurance.net.
Bayou Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram has $10,000 off MSRP on new 23 Jeep Grand Cherokee, $10,000 off new Jeep Grand Cherokee, and all new Bayou Automotive vehicles come with a 1 million mile warranty. The crew at Bayou Automotive is going to do right by you.
The Windsor Senior Living Community in Mandeville, Louisiana is a beautiful, vibrant apartment community geared towards seniors. They are nestled right in the heart of Mandeville, where seniors live a more carefree lifestyle in spacious apartments with the peace of mind that comes from having a little extra help. Call the Windsor at 985-624-8040 to schedule a lunch and tour. Come see how the Windsor can be your passport to peace of mind.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary, for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected, supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team, and backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded, because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Electricity is all around us, and our families depend on it. Every day is sparked by the power of a cold drink or a warm meal, a movie night, and a comforting light at the end of a dark hallway. From sunrise to sunset, playtime to bedtime, our team is ready to take care of your electrical needs, even in the case of an after-hours emergency. The light in your life shines brighter with Mr. Electric.
The best kept secret in town is out. Discover Tallulah at the Renaissance Hotel on Bluebonnet.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This Sunday, as we bring you 3 different NFL games, we start with the noon kickoff, the Vikings and Lions. Immediately following that, it's Bears and Packers. And then the night game, the Bills at Dolphins. Tune in this Sunday to hear all 3 of those games here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
There's been a lot of social media fallout from the defensive staff changes that LSU has made today. I'm going to get to those here in a couple of minutes to close out this hour, but I do want to mention the announcement of Harlem Berry tonight. Harlem Berry, the #1 running back in the country from New Orleans. He is in the 2025 class, so he's currently a junior at St. Martin's down there in NOLA. And all indications are that Harlem Berry will elect to stay home and play for LSU. And that'd be a fantastic get for Frank Wilson and for this program, because when you got a talent like that in the state of Louisiana, you got to make it happen. And I've made a lot of comments over the last really 2 years about the talent level in LSU's backfield. And it's been good by college football standards. But LSU has been elite at producing professional running backs, the vast majority of which have come from the state of Louisiana. You go back to Kevin Falk and Jacob Hester, can run through the line. Guys outside of Adai and Ridley, Spencer Ware, it's pretty much all Louisiana folks. Fournette and Geis and Clyde and Jeremy Hill and Kenny Hilliard. Alfred Blue played for a long time in the NFL. And like you've had great backs that have gone on to play in the NFL, and I just feel like the level may have dipped a little bit. But when you look at the talent that Caleb Jackson is, and you saw what he did in the bowl game with, in my opinion, not enough touches, but the talent that he's got, and you look at Caden Durham, who is one of the best backs in the country, who's ripping off 80-yard touchdown runs in the highest level of the Texas high school playoffs. Those are the talents it looks like, and Harlem Berry is right in line with those two guys. So if you stack those 3 in consecutive classes, now you've got a room that looks like the LSU running back rooms really in the Les Miles days. So tonight we expect that decision to go LSU's way. You understand that LSU already has a commitment in that class from the #1 wide receiver in the country, and DeCorian Moore from Duncanville in Texas. And Bryce Underwood, the #1 quarterback in the class, is going to announce at about 4:30 on Saturday this coming. So as of 5 o'clock p.m. on Saturday, LSU could have commitments from the #1 wide receiver, #1 running back, and #1 quarterback in the class of 2025. It's early for those guys to sign on the dotted line, but it's a pretty good start. And Joe Sloan has been in the middle of all these recruiting battles, as has Frank Wilson. And I don't know what Brian Kelly prioritizes. I don't know where he's headed in terms of an offensive coordinator hire, but it feels like things are running really well over there. You like what you've got with Joe Sloan at quarterback's coach. You like what you've got in Frank Wilson with his recruiting prowess and the way that he's shepherded these running back rooms. And obviously you feel like Cortez Hankton is a big piece to that puzzle as well. in the passing game and out at wide receivers, where he developed incredible receivers at Georgia and has done the same here in Baton Rouge. So it just feels like everything's really in a good place. I didn't even mention the offensive line and what Brad Davis has cooking over there, and that's fantastic. And at tight end, they're doing great too. Everything feels like it's in sync and it's flowing on the offensive side of the ball, and Harlan Berry and Bryce Underwood could add to that over the next 3 days. It's just a matter of getting that defense right, and that kind of started today. And I hesitate to dive too deep into 18, 19, 20-year-old social media posts, because I still get my Facebook memories from like 2007 when I was in college, and they are real stupid. I mean, dumb stuff being posted on the internet at that point. That's just college kids do college kid stuff. So I don't make a habit of like trying to read the tea leaves on tweets. Sometimes it's about your girlfriend. Sometimes it's the lyrics to a song you like. Sometimes there's a real message in there. I can't get caught up in it. However, it's difficult to tune out LSU's players' tweets from today. You've got Braden Swenson literally posting a video of him kicking rocks. Maybe his girlfriend just dumped him. I don't know, but I kind of doubt it. You've got Harold Perkins tweeting out, it's different when the rabbit's got the gun. Again, I can't translate that literally into what it means in regards to LSU's defensive staff, but I don't think it's great. Everybody made a big deal about the Mekhi Wingo video yesterday and the reaction that he had to Matt House. Like, I have no idea what exactly it meant. I could paint you a picture that it had nothing to do with Matt House, and that it was a guy who was emotional after his final college game, who had made a huge play to end it, and who was just an emotional, stoic moment for him. Or maybe he hates Matt House. I don't know. But it's another thing. And then you look at Dominic McKinley liking tweets about the departure of the coaching staff. And you got people, rumors flying around that, hey, that's why he committed, because he knew there were changes coming. Like, I don't know. But the culture broke down in the LSU football program in 2020. That is beyond debate. Who's at fault for that? What events transpired that made that happen? That's a different discussion. But the fact is that the culture broke down. And it doesn't feel like sitting back and looking at all this with 4 coaches being fired in one day and players hitting the Twitter streets and all that, it doesn't feel like things were awesome on the defensive side of the ball. I tell y'all every week during football season, I do go in football ops every Friday and do a 3-minute interview with an assistant coach. And it doesn't mean that I'm tuned in and plugged in to what's going on day to day, player to player, relationship with relationship. Like, I don't know. I'm just reading these tea leaves that are pretty pronounced. And it's like, man, like something went way wrong. And to go back to the lead of the show, like, yes, I believe that it was a shortcoming / failure at every level. Recruiting, development, coaching, scheming, play calling, players executing, tackling. They didn't rush the passer. They didn't stop the run. Like, there's so many things all the things you could point to say this isn't good enough. Just how deep some of this stuff went, we may never know, but Brian Kelly's making an effort to fix it. I mean, this doesn't happen very often. 4 assistant coaches being let go on one side of the ball at the same time does not happen very often. Now, how quickly Brian Kelly moves to make these changes and what the changes are and how quickly you can then create results on the field that are markedly different, it feels like that's a long way away. But they're making moves to try to get it done. And if you've been literally under a rock somewhere here in Baton Rouge and haven't seen it, that's been the news of the day. We'll react to it a little bit more with Glenn West coming up. He's going to be at the top of hour number 2. Glenn covers the Tigers for Go 24/7 and was at the bowl game in Tampa, was traveling yesterday in his normal Tuesday spot and couldn't get back to us, but he's going to join us today. coming up here in 5 minutes, and we'll talk some Saints in the second hour as well. I also have some more LSU talk that I want to get to in hour number 2 that deals with the wide receivers. We know that Jalen Brown and Brian Thomas have made their decisions to move on, so what does the wide receiver room look like? I'll talk a little bit more about that. If you missed any of hour number 1, you can always catch it on demand, 1045ESPN.com's on-demand tab, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google, wherever you find your sound, you can find us. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. Throw us a like and a subscription. We certainly appreciate that. Open the show talking about the departures on the coaching staff. We did have J.D. Piquel. He gave his thoughts on what LSU does from here. It was What If Wednesday. We got to some of that, which largely had to do with LSU's defensive coaching search. And then we talked a little recruiting there with Harlan Berry and Bryce Underwood. You can catch it all on demand. And I want to remind you can go to Hunt on LSU for all of your LSU football content. Those of you on YouTube, we appreciate you hanging out with us. Throw us a like if you could. We're going to take a break for Sports Center. Come back with us at the top of hour number 2. Glenn West, senior writer at Go 24/7, is going to jump aboard the Hunt Palmer Show.
Bayou Ford has the new inventory to get you in a new Ford truck or SUV today, or customize your next vehicle just the way you want. All new Bayou Ford vehicles come with a 1 million mile powertrain warranty. The crew at Bayou Ford is going to do right by you.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Dylan Cruz here to tell you about Six Rings Baseball and Softball Camp. If you live on the North Shore and play ball, go to Six Rings Camps with former LSU assistant coach Dan Canaveri. His knowledge is second to none, and your child will improve and have fun doing it. Camps were held at Coquille Park and Six Rings Academy in Covington with 4 sessions over the summer. Full day and morning only sessions are available from ages 7 to 13. Go to sixringsbaseball.com or call 985-206-9096. Learn the game to love the game.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected, supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team, and backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded, because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Electricity is all around us, and our families depend on it. Every day is sparked by the power of a cold drink or a warm meal, a movie night, and a comforting light at the end of a dark hallway. From sunrise to sunset, playtime to bedtime, our team is ready to take care of your electrical needs, even in the case of an after-hours emergency. The light in your life shines brighter with Mr. Electric.
At Relief Windows, we're more than windows. We're windows, doors, hardy plank, and vinyl siding. But our #1 product is always customer satisfaction. Visit us online at reliefwindows.com. Oh, by the way, we do shutters too.
Gulf Coast Bank and Trust is giving our customers the power to bank anywhere, anytime during this challenging event. And we're right there with you. Our mobile banking app is a smart way to manage your money and time. Gulf Coast Bank and Trust, the bank that cares about you.
The best kept secret in town is out. Discover Tallulah at the Renaissance Hotel on Bluebonnet.
This is SportsCenter.
I'm Christine Lisi. Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence, a limited participant at today's practice. He's day-to-day with a shoulder injury, which sidelined him for the last game. Jacksonville can clinch the AFC South in Sunday's regular season finale with a win in Tennessee. Eagles coach Nick Sirianni told reporters he believes receiver Devontae Smith, cornerback Darius Slay, and linebacker Zach Cunningham will play on Sunday against the Giants. Playoff-bound Philadelphia has been stumbling, 4 losses the last 5 games. Former Eagles linebacker and host of the Seth Joyner Show on YouTube, Seth Joyner.
I don't know how they fix it. They've been talking about fixing it all season long, and here we are in Week 18. They're still talking about fixing it and getting some things right. I believe it's safe to assume that they're not going to get it fixed. They should beat the Giants this week, but I'm not hopeful that they're going to go that far in the playoffs.
Seth Joyner on Carlin versus Joe. Chiefs, the AFC's 3 seed, will be resting quarterback Patrick Mahomes Sunday against the Chargers. Cleveland will rest quarterback Joe Flacco, among other key players, Sunday in Cincinnati. The Browns are already locked into the AFC's 5 seed.
Hey, it's your resident Super Bowl champ, Chris Kenny. Coming up Thursday, I'll tell you why a loss to the Bills could ruin all the good the Dolphins have built up this year. It's Unsportsmanlike, 6 a.m. Eastern, right here on ESPN Radio, ESPN2, and ESPNU.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I direct your attention to something quite extraordinary?
Now, the Hunt Palmer Show. The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studios. This is Hunt Palmer.
Hour 2 on a Wednesday. Half the work week in the rearview mirror. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on the Hunt Palmer Show, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Usually on Tuesdays, we chat with our guy Glenn West of Go 247, but he was traveling. Now he's back. Football season's over, so there's not much to talk about, right, Glenn?
Yeah, I was just about to say, what do we have to talk about today, Hunt? You want to talk about some men's basketball, some baseball in 40 days? What are we going to talk about?
Oh, don't tempt me there. You don't want that answer. But look, we got the press release from LSU a little bit around 11 o'clock today that 4 defensive coaches have been let go. What was your initial reaction to that news?
Yeah, I don't think totally surprised by the news that they were going to be replacing all those guys. But I think the surprising part was that it was all announced at once. It was a mass exodus, and I think now you kind of turn your focus here, towards what's the route here? What's the route of where LSU wants to go? And obviously, for Brian Kelly, it's about building championships and building, for the future. And I think that. After 2 years now, a lot of this defensive core that they're going to be replacing, they've just kind of come to the point of realization here where what just wasn't working here after 2 years. And obviously, when you have such a historically bad season like they did this past year on the defensive side of the ball, it makes your decision a little bit easier, I think, if you're Brian Kelly, just because from game 1 to game 13, I mean, you saw it for 3 quarters against Wisconsin. There really just didn't seem to be a whole ton of improvement, and I think that's kind of the realization that you gotta come to as a head coach. You got to make these tough calls, and that's why Brian Kelly was brought in here, to be the CEO type, to be the guy that knows when to kind of cut bait with guys, knows when to kind of make these decisions, and now he's got to. I think he probably enters now one of the most important off seasons of his entire career in terms of making these decisions and. Trying to get the right coaching staff in here on the defensive side of the ball.
The defense was not that bad in 2022. Like, it was pretty functional. They weren't great, but they were okay. And you had a lot of the same coaches coming back. Where do you think it went so wrong?
Yeah, I think you were trying to bank on obviously internal development from this last year, but they also, of the 15 transfers that they brought in this last year, a lot of those transfers were younger guys. They were guys LSU was hoping to build into the program for 2 or 3 years, and certainly in the secondary, you look at guys like Denver Harris and Deuce Chestnut. That certainly didn't work out. You certainly had a lot of injuries throughout the course of the year, whether it was Mekhi Wingo or Zy Alexander that certainly didn't seem to pan out in terms of just like the injury situation was not all that great for LSU. But I think there's accountability here on everybody. I think there was certainly some miscues in terms of talent evaluation out of the portal, certainly the internal development part of all this. And, I just always come back to just really it looked like there was a disconnect and some frustration, I think, between players and coaches and players. I think it went both ways in terms of just not being able to be totally in sync. We were still talking, I think, 3 or 4 weeks into the season about, man, what's the best way to use Harold Perkins? And they were finally able to figure it out and get him going a little bit. But I just think that there was just a lot of miscues, I guess, this past season, and it's kind of where you're at today with them now replacing their entire defensive staff. And I kind of also think here, like, the biggest thing for Brian Kelly is this offseason has been player retention and personnel retention. And if you were going to be bringing back this entire or a lot of these defensive players, a lot of this core, a lot of these young guys you're hoping to develop, that it really makes sense to also run it back with the same coaching staff as well. And I think that, one of those two things is going to have to happen. And obviously with the coaching staff now, we're learning here that, they're going to be moving forward with a bunch of new guys coaching up these players that they're hoping to get back.
I don't even like asking this question, but I feel like people would like to hear your thoughts on it, so I will. What do you make of the social media posts from today? The kicking rocks and the rabbits got the gun and the Mekhi Wingo video and all that kind of stuff. Do you draw anything from that, or is it just kids being kids?
Yeah, I think it's probably the latter, just kids being kids. And look, I think it does point to there was some disconnect, right? I mean, I think that's the root of the issue here was that there was, some guys just weren't being used the way that they thought they would. And certainly there was some conversations about just where those guys were going to fit into the future of the defense and what that looks like. So I do think that there's not a whole lot that you think you can make of that. But, I think it just honestly just points to the fact that there was some stuff here that LSU needed to get fixed. And now they're making these moves to try to fix and try to change directions of getting a better defense and one that's going to be a little bit more productive going forward.
We don't know who's going to coordinate the defense. We don't know who any of the position coaches are going to be. There are so many question marks as far as the coaching staff goes. As far as the personnel, you've got a reasonable idea of who they're going to have for defense. Sure, they could add a player or two here, or they're out of the transfer portal here coming up, and maybe they do that, and maybe they find Jared Verse in the next 6 months. But I kind of doubt it. I think you kind of know who the guys are going to be. Is there a realistic expectation that LSU can field a good defense next year?
I think so. I mean, I think you're going to be banking a lot on internal development. Look, the Mekhi Wingo one, I think, is probably your most significant loss to this point. And I know they were making a huge pitch to him to try to come back and see if they couldn't have the interior of that defense still relatively intact. I think it now makes Mason Smith and Jacobian Guillory coming back an absolute must. And you've also probably got to go dip into the portal at some point and get some extra help back there for the defensive tackles. But I do think that this is going to be a huge offseason in terms of internal development. Brian Kelly's talked about it. We've talked about it a lot in the media. Just how important it is to get some of these young freshmen, these young guys built up in the program. It's going to be big off seasons for guys like Deshaun Womack, Javian Toviano, Whit Weeks. Harold Perkins, of course, and certainly guys like Mason Smith, who you're hoping can kind of get back on track after looking like he had a year where he was going to try to get back into game shape and trying to get back into the version of himself that we think a lot of us think he can get to. So if you can get a lot of those guys back and going in the right directions and develop them the right way this off season, I think you've got some talent coming in. I mean, they got 28 freshmen that they're bringing in this off season. They've certainly attacked the defensive side of the ball, and with Jordan Gilbert, and certainly now with Austin Osbury, you're hoping to get maybe a few more defensive backs in here before everything's said and done. So I think it's a believe it till you see it kind of deal, I think, right now with the defense. But I do think that a lot of the decisions that Brian Kelly makes in the coming days and weeks will really be a big kind of bullet point in his career here, and just kind of how LSU is able to overcome this.
Let's flip sides of the ball and talk about the offense, because while there's so much turmoil on the defensive side of the ball, I made the point moving back, and I think it's what they've got on the roster, what's coming in, and then you look at the announcements of Harlan Berry and potentially Bryce Underwood here in the next couple of days. It feels like the offense is in really, really healthy position. What do you make of that group in terms of the health of the program?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, just to put a positive spin on this, which is I'm glad you're doing here towards the end of the review, the offense is in a championship level place. I mean, I think that they've done a really nice job of getting the right coaches in here, getting the right foundational players offensively at all positions to kind of really build this thing up and evolve it into one of the more consistent units in the country. And so, yeah, I think you'll see that and it reflected and certainly in some of these decisions in the coming days and weeks and months. But definitely, I think that the biggest thing here now for this offense is just getting Garrett Nussmeier comfortable, getting a lot of these new weapons that obviously played behind Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, get them more comfortable and get that chemistry going. But I do think that they have so much potential going forward, even though you lose a guy like Lance Hurd or Jalen Brown here and there. There's a ton of momentum going and a ton of positivity, I think, around the offense and where this thing can go going forward.
Coaching searches, high school commitments, team coverage, Glenn and the folks over at Go 24/7 got you covered on all of it. Check them out. Glenn's with us every Tuesday, but made some room for us today. Glenn, thanks for the time, man.
All right. Thanks, Hunt. Appreciate it.
He's Glenn West, senior writer over at Go 24/7. I want to talk about LSU's wide receivers. We'll do that coming up at 2:30 because you saw that Brian Thomas has announced he's going to enter the draft. Jalen Brown is entering the transfer portal. What does that mean for that group? But we'll change gears here briefly and talk a little Saints here coming up next on the Hunt Palmer Show.
Our listeners fire off their opinions on the jimsfirearms.net hotline at 499-1045. Keep listening for your next chance to shoot us your thoughts with the jimsfirearms.net hotline on 1045 ESPN Baton Rouge.
There it is, the extra mile. On the border of expected and extraordinary for those willing to go further. Like vans customized for work or play. With safety and tech to keep you connected. Supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team. And backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Hey, it's Matt Moscona. For years, you've heard me tell you about Insurance Network of Louisiana, helping you find better coverage for less money. But it's not just for your home and auto. They also offer commercial property. So, retail stores, professional offices like doctors, dentists, attorneys, clothing boutiques. Insurance Network of Louisiana can find you better coverage for less money. They service the entire state of Louisiana, and they're local. So call today at 293-0450 or lainsurance.net.
The importance of doing this fortified program and offering it to people down here is, number one, the only real chance you're going to get to do this is when you put on a new roof or build new. And through companies like HUDCO, who's kind of leading the way in this thing, it's going to offer the customers a huge advantage in the insurance market and the price of their insurance.
We're not looking to make a fortune off fortifying. We're trying to give you a better product than our competitor at the moment. I'm trying to do something that he can. I'm trying to give you something better. So a lot of these insurance jobs, you're getting a re-roof, you're only paying your deductible. Let's sit down and talk about the fortified and let's see what it does to your insurance premium. You're getting a steal.
Yeah.
You're getting a brand new roof and a fortified certificate for your deductible, essentially. And I think we're rocking and rolling.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Dylan Cruz here to tell you about Six Rings Baseball and Softball Camp. If you live on the North Shore and play ball, go to Six Rings Camps with former LSU assistant coach Dan Canaveri. His knowledge is second to none, and your child will improve and have fun doing it. Camps were held at Coquille Park and Six Rings Academy in Covington with 4 sessions over the summer. Full day and morning only sessions are available from ages 7 to 13. Go to sixringsbaseball.com or call 985-206-9096. Learn the game to love the game.
Business.
At Ruffino's, it's all about 2024, and that means it's time to mark your calendars for Ruffino's January cooking experience. Rebirth, a New Orleans culinary affair. Tuesday, January 9th. It's an evening with our chefs for a 5-course meal, hand-selected wine pairings, and front row seats to watch the Ruffino's kitchen team prepare your meal right before your eyes. Fantastic flavors, delicious beverages, and culinary surprises. It's sure to be a night to remember. Ruffino's, where Louisiana comes to celebrate life.
Bayou Ford and Bayou Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. 5 brands on one lot. Shop BayouAutomotive.com.
104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Monday night, we bring you the College Football National Championship as the Washington Huskies face off against the Michigan Wolverines. Kickoff begins at 6:30, and we will have full coverage for you here. So tune in to catch the National Championship game here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Busy day, fast moving one. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Invite you guys that are hanging out on YouTube to hit that like button. Certainly appreciate that. It helps us out. Trying to get our content into as many eyeballs as we can. I want to switch gears. We've been on LSU for an hour and 15 minutes, so I wanted to talk a little bit of Saints. And I'll be honest, I have been pretty pessimistic on New Orleans for the last 6-7 weeks. I just have. I don't love the direction of the franchise. I don't like the way this team has played. I don't like the way the salary cap looks and the age of the roster. There are a lot of things I don't like. But this morning I sat down and I went, I'm going to do a Saints segment today. We're not going to talk about the Falcons game yet. And I'm not going to be a curmudgeon here. We're going to try to find something that I like about what's going on in New Orleans. And to try to get this thing pointed in the right direction, the Saints have to get younger and in some places get cheaper. That's just the reality of their situation right now with the oldest roster in the NFL. And I think there's a lot to like out at wide receiver with Olave and with Shaheed, who are young and productive and look to be really, really good players in the league. And I think they're doing a good job in the secondary. They've hit, I believe, on Adebo and Alontae Taylor, and there's some good things there. But the guy that I want to talk about in this segment is Brian Bresee, because your defensive front for 2 years now has not been good enough. They don't stop the run. They're not rushing the passer. They have not been good enough on the defensive front. And they decided this year, we're going to move on from some of the old guard. Onyemata's out of here, and we're going to try to spend some money and some draft capital in getting this fixed. And I would suggest that Colin Saunders and Nathan Shepard have not been very good. They've been average and it sometimes just absent. But Bresee, for a rookie, has flashed to me sometimes. His stats are not going to blow you away. He's got 4.5 sacks, which is good from an interior defensive perspective. And he's not going to wow you with tackles. He has not made more than 4 in any game this year. But he's flashing. And to me, there are some positions in the NFL where playing as a rookie are more difficult than others. It's all hard to come in as a rookie and play in the National Football League. But I would suggest playing running back is a little bit easier transition for some of these first-round talents. I would suggest potentially safety or just rushing the passer as an edge guy. A little bit easier. Quarterback, not easy. And I would suggest defensive tackle, interior defensive line, not easy. You're getting in there with these technicians who were 5 years older than you, 7 years older than you, like Jason Kelsey, who's on the back end of that. But, these all pro, and that's men against boys when you start to think about it. And it's all leverage game. And for these guys' entire lives, they've been able to fire off the ball and knock the next guy out. In high school, you can just blow guys up. And some of these guys are so talented that in college, even if you don't have great technique, you can get away with it. You get to the NFL, it better be damn good. And so while Brian Bresee's not flashing from a statistical perspective, when you watch the Saints 3 times a game, he makes play like, oh, okay. And to me, that's a reasonable expectation of a hit on a first-round draft pick who's on the interior defensive line. I would suggest that moving into an offseason, coming into next year, he needs to be more consistent and more productive and flash more. But when I watch the Saints, without, like I said yesterday, turning on the All-22 and breaking down every rep like Pro Football Focus does, no, just as a casual observer watching the game, I would say Brian Bresee is showing some things at that size, with that agility, at this level, that suggests, okay, we may be onto something here. Because it takes some time. Like Carl Granderson finally blossomed this year. But it took a little bit of time. And that looks to be a hit. And they've paid him. Jury's out on Isaiah Foskey. Right now, I'm a little pessimistic about that. But I think Brian Bresee, along with Carl Granderson, could give you 2 guys who can really get after the passer. Bresee's got to work on his run stopping. That'll come. But just being big and mobile and strong and getting into the backfield and creating pressures like he did in the game. We had that huge sack against Tampa. Had 2 sacks a couple weeks ago against the Giants. Like, it's starting to come. And that's really encouraging to me. Mario, you're calling these games. You're watching the black and gold. Like, what are your thoughts on Bresee as he's progressed throughout a rookie year?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think he'll benefit a lot from more reps as he goes in his NFL career, but he flashes enough to where you see what the Saints saw in him. And I actually have a stat on Twitter from John Seigler with the Saints Wire. Bresee has the most sacks, 4.5 for a rookie defensive tackle in Saints history. And 6 PBUs are also the most for a rookie in Saints history. So far, the production is there, and I think you'll see more production as he gets more experience and gets more comfortable with the defense.
And I want him to take a role there because the 2 guys they signed there in Saunders and Shepard, I'm just not wowed with. I agreed with the Saints' decision to take what was – they had that long run where they were never allowing 100-yard rushers, and they were really stout up front. And guys started to cycle out and age out, and over the last 2 years, they've been poor at stopping the run and certainly rushing the passer, especially from the interior. And this looks to be a patch there. It's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, it sucks because for the longest time you were looking for that running mate with Cam Jordan. You had Junior Gillette, and then you didn't really have that until you got Trey Hendrickson, and you weren't able to keep him. Now Granderson's popping off a little bit, but Cam Jordan, not really the same Cam Jordan as the last few years, right? So that's definitely a welcome development, and honestly, they need to continue to draft well there because they have not drafted well at that position as of late.
You've got to draft well in the NFL no matter who you are, but as I look at the Saints situation right now, they better start hitting on some of these draft picks. And that's why I'm a little disappointed in the Foskey pick in the second round because that's a primo pick that you had early there in the second round. And he may turn into a stud. But right now, the jury's very much still out on that. And with the salary situation you're in with some of the players that you're attached to for the next couple of years, if you want to continue to compete at a high level, which the Saints always adamantly try to do, you better create some hits with these draft picks. And Olave has been very good, and I mentioned Adebo, mentioned Alontae Taylor. That's all very good, and it looks like Bresee is going to be a hit as well. We'll see with Kendre Miller. He hasn't been out there enough for us to even make a decision on that. But if I'm looking for some sunshine there, I think that Brian Bresee certainly presents that to this point. So there's your Saints talk for the day. We'll get far deeper into Saints and Falcons coming up on tomorrow's show. Reminder, we've got a YouTube channel for the Saints, Hunt on Saints. All of our Saints content uploaded every single day. Get it in 10-minute digestible clips, and if you subscribe to the channel, it'll come right to your homepage. You can get all your black and gold updates here from the Hunt Palmer Show. Again, that's Hunt on Saints on YouTube. It's a Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
In times of need, get a full list of phone numbers, websites, and other important emergency information on the Demco Stormwatch page at 1045ESPN.com.
His name was King. He had a horse along the countryside. I saw him ride. One day they found him.
It was a humid day. Barefoot children play, looking for that summer shade. Time just slips away. Oh, Louisiana, some kind of hold on me. Like cypress stumps, your roots are planted deep inside of me.
At Relief Windows, we're more than windows. We're windows, doors, hardy plank, and vinyl siding. But our number one product is always customer satisfaction. Visit us online at reliefwindows.com.
Hey, look what I found!
The motivation I needed to live healthier.
My new favorite sport.
I found my groove.
I found I'm part fish.
My second win when I needed it most.
I found more than a gym.
The affordable childcare this mom needed. Time for myself. We found our why.
Have you found yours?
Hey, boat owners, check it out. It is the holiday season, which means it's time to buy yourself a gift by taking your boat to the next level with our friends at Front to Back Boat Service. Now is the perfect time to upgrade your boat and get it ready for that warmer weather, whether that's trolling motors, HD sonar, anything and everything. The Sherman family's been at it for 30 years, and Devin's going to take you through 30 more. Find them on Facebook at Front to Back Boat Service or go to fronttobackboatservice.com.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected. Supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team. And backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Electricity is all around us, and our families depend on it. Every day is sparked by the power of a cold drink or a warm meal, a movie night, and a comforting light at the end of a dark hallway. From sunrise to sunset, playtime to bedtime, our team is ready to take care of your electrical needs. Even in the case of an after-hours emergency, the light in your life shines brighter with Mr. Electric.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that...
Moscona inviting you to join us for Wednesday's AFR presented by Pluckers. Transfer portal window is closed. We'll assess all the carnage, and we'll head to Atlanta, take a closer look at the Falcons. Join us 3 to 6, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Spent the entire first hour on LSU football, outside of a little bit of a national divergence with J.D. Pickell, but we spent a lot of time on LSU's defensive staff basically being entirely replaced. A couple of guys, John Jancic returning, Bob Diaco did some work with special teams and outside linebackers and whatnot. But basically, LSU's overturning its entire defensive staff. And if you want to hear more about that, you can catch what we had to say on demand at 1045ESPN.com's on-demand tab, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, YouTube. Wherever you find your sound, you can find that at the top of the show. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the wide receiver room because we had 2 departures yesterday. Brian Thomas, to no one's surprise, decided that he's going to forego his final season at LSU and enter the NFL draft. And then Jaylen Brown, a talented freshman, has decided he's going to move on as well. If you take Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas's receiving yards this year, you get 3,746 yards. 2,746 yards. And that's 62% of LSU's receiving. And only Kyron Lacy, Chris Hilton, and Aaron Anderson, as far as wide receivers, had catches. The rest of the catches went to tight ends and running backs. You did not see any catches for Shelton Sampson, who had a couple drops against Grambling. No catches for Kyle Parker. No catches for Landon Ibieta, or no catches for Jaylen Brown, who we just mentioned. And so you've got a very unproven wide receiver room to this point. Kyron Lacy was a really good 3, and I think will be a productive player for LSU next year. We've seen flashes from Chris Hilton, the biggest being the deep shot Garrett Nussmeier hit him on for the chunk play on the last drive against Wisconsin. Hilton has shown his home run speed and has just got to work on catching the football and holding on to it. But when he does, he's a handful. Aaron Anderson, coming back off the injury, never quite found a rhythm or a flow, muffed that kick early against Florida State, and then was really a non-factor for much of the time. And then, as I mentioned, those freshmen were non-factors. So LSU's got some work to do in developing wide receivers. Now, you trust Cortez Hankton to do that, and you think that you've got a quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier who's very capable of getting guys involved because he played so well in the bowl game. I'm curious what comes of these freshmen. I should have gone and pulled the tape, but I didn't think to do it. I went to one bowl practice, and I was there for about 45 minutes. And so trying to boil down a young player's entire first season by 45 minutes of an indoor practice is not necessarily a representative sample size. In fact, it is not. That's not what I'm trying to do here. But I will tell you, because I said this when I got back from that practice on the air, Jaylen Brown ran a couple routes that day. One, he ran a go route and used that unbelievable speed and just cold dropped one. And the second time, he tried to get into a break and tried to break down, and he just kind of tripped over his feet. And to me, when you're that talented and that fast, which Jaylen Brown is a track star, you're on the field unless there are some things you've really got to work on from a wide receiver perspective. And I think that's the case. I think Jaylen Brown is far from a finished product, and he's going to try to develop elsewhere. That leaves from that really, really talented freshman wide receiver class Shelton Sampson, Kyle Parker, and Kai Preem. Sampson had 2 cold drops that would have both been touchdowns in the Grambling game. And we haven't seen a lot of Kyle Parker, although in the 45 minutes I was at that practice, he did make a couple really nice plays. He's a Texas native who really is a technician in running his routes. He's not necessarily the biggest. He's not the fastest, but he's a good route runner and a guy that I think can create a lot of separation. And he's a pretty good athlete, just not can run like Jaylen Brown. He's not built like Shelton Sampson. You get the picture there. So you bring in your transfer from Mississippi State, and you think that you've got a really good option there, certainly in the return game, and a guy who caught 500 yards worth of balls in a bad offense last year. And you lean on Lacy and Hilton and Anderson and hope those freshmen kind of blossom. That's the hope here. But I'm not going to sit here in January and say, well, you got Nussmeier. He's playing great. All these guys are 4 stars. Wide receiver's going to be awesome. Like, you don't just immediately lose the leading receiver in the history of the program and another 1,000-yard guy who's probably going to go in the top, I'll be conservative and say 40 picks of the draft. Maybe it's 15. But in the top 40 picks in the draft, those 2 guys who both went over 1,000 yards, one led the country, one led the country in touchdowns, and you just, next guy. Lacy was a great 3. Put him at 1. Chris Hilton, he's really fast. He's awesome. Put him right in there. He'll be great. Shelton Sampson, 5-star. He's a sophomore. He'll be awesome. Maybe. I'm hoping. I'm hoping for all of that. And I'm not, like, massively concerned about the offense. About the wide receiver group. You'd heard me 30 minutes ago tell you how good a spot I think this offense is in terms of the program. I love the offensive line, even with the departure of Lance Hurd. I think what you've got going at quarterback is very good. Garrett Nussmeier's got 2 years of eligibility left. You've got a couple of guys behind him. You've brought in a veteran backup in A.J. Swan. And then you hope Bryce Underwood is the next piece here coming on Saturday. Tight end room is in phenomenal shape. Love Mason Taylor, Mac Markway, Kamorian Pimpton. You continue to add to that tight end group. Running back, we went through that with the Harlem Berry announcement. I love potential of Keepin Diggs, Caleb Jackson, Trey Holly, Caden Durham, Harlem Berry. Like, that looks really, really good. And the talent at wide receiver looks really, really good as well. But the production you just got from those two guys is daunting when you look at it. And there weren't enough footballs to go around for Chris Hilton to have a monster year. There weren't enough footballs to go around, playing time, for Shelton Sampson to break out as a freshman. But, Jarvis Landry didn't break out as a freshman. He got hurt in camp, and it was basically Ruben Randall and Odell, and they ran the ball a ton, and all of a sudden Jarvis came out as a sophomore and ripped it up. And maybe that's the case for Shelton Sampson. I sure hope so. But they've got a spring and a summer and then a fall camp to get ready to go. My gut tells me if I'm trying to map out how I think this works, and I am just cold blanking on the Mississippi State transfer's name. I cannot come up with it. I didn't write it down. Somebody put it in the Bayou Ford chat as I go through it because I'm just blanking on it hard. I know he's a kick returner. I know he's from New Orleans. I know he caught 538 yards worth of balls in Mississippi State, and I can't come up with the name. But if I had to bet on it, I would guess that you're looking at Kyron Lacey kind of being the lead dog. I think Chris Hilton develops a little bit more than just the straight line speed that we've seen. I think those two guys, Xavier Thomas, thank you for everybody in there. That's and then Xavier Thomas, I think, is your third guy. I don't know what to think about Aaron Anderson yet. The high school film is incredible. I thought he looked good in camp. And then he caught a couple of kickoffs, and I was like, where's the burst? And I'm hoping he kind of recovers from that. And that would be a good hit. And then I just think one of these two, between Sampson and Parker, needs to develop into what Kyron Lacey was this year. If they can be, what were Kyron Lacey's final stats here? 30 catches, 558 yards, 7 touchdowns. And I don't even need the 7 touchdowns. You had the Heisman Trophy winner throwing the ball. So that's a lot. But that, I think, is not as good as what you just had, but good enough with a quality quarterback, which I think you've got. I think it goes Lacey, Hilton, Thomas. I'll lean Sampson, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Parker was the next guy. And Cortez Hankton, we'll see what kind of a wide receiver developer that he is. I think that he did great work, obviously, with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. But if you can replicate that production with these guys, then all of a sudden, you've really got something. Now you know that machine's rolling. Because that's always the thing. Like, is it the program or is it that one dude? You found out pretty quick with, like, Kevin Sumlin and A&M. Like, it was the one dude. Hopefully this is not just a Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas product. It's LSU's offense, and it's just it's a part of the program. You just wheel them in and out. It's like Saban's defense. Always good. Just get the next guy. Next guy. Next guy. Will Anderson's gone. There's Dallas Turner. Like, that's what you're hoping for at wide receiver. I still have that hope. I feel like there may be some of you that would listen to this segment and say, he's being negative about. I don't think I'm being overly negative. I'm just trying to be realistic in that I think oftentimes a dominant player moves on and we think the next guy, just because he was a 4 or 5 star, like, they'll be fine. I'll just plug him in there. I'm not going to do that with Friday night guy for LSU coming up in 6 weeks either. Think it'll be Thatcher Hurd? I think it'll be great. I think it'll be Paul Skeens? Not quite. You don't have to be Paul Skeens. Just be the great Thatcher Hurd. Be the Thatcher Hurd we saw in Game 3 of the championship series. Kyron Lacey, you don't have to be Malik Neighbors. Just elevate your game and let the rest of the crew come along. I'm concerned about the talent level and the depth at defensive tackle. Like, that's a concern. This is a question. Can those guys step up and fill those holes? I was bummed to see Jaylen Brown was leaving. I kind of get it. And I was bummed to see Brian Thomas leave, but I knew that was coming. Like, there was thoughts like, oh, maybe BT will come back. NIL stuff. No, that's top 40 pick money, top 20 pick money maybe. Go and play for the Raiders. Go and play for the Bears. Like, it's good. But LSU's got talent on offense. I'm not overly concerned about anything on the offensive side of the ball, but I wanted to talk a little bit about wide receivers while we had a little bit of time. Appreciate y'all for hanging out with us here on this Wednesday. We got one segment to go. It's always take it or leave it. That's next.
Our listeners fire off their opinions on the jimsfirearms.net hotline at 499-1045. Keep listening for your next chance to shoot us your thoughts with the jimsfirearms.net hotline on 1045 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Gulf Coast Bank and Trust is giving our customers the power to bank anywhere, anytime during this challenging event. And we're right there with you. Our mobile banking app is a smart way to manage your money and time. Gulf Coast Bank and Trust, the bank that cares about you.
His name was King. He had a horse along the countryside. I saw him ride. One day they found him.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary, for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected. Supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team. And backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded, because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Dylan Cruz here to tell you about Six Rings Baseball and Softball Camp. If you live on the North Shore and play ball, go to Six Rings Camps with former LSU assistant coach Dan Canaveri. His knowledge is second to none, and your child will improve and have fun doing it. Camps are held at Coquille Park and Six Rings Academy in Covington with 4 sessions over the summer. Full day and morning only sessions are available from ages 7 to 13. Go to sixringsbaseball.com or call 985-206-9096. Learn the game to love the game.
Electricity is all around us, and our families depend on it. Every day is sparked by the power of a cold drink or a warm meal, a movie night, and a comforting light at the end of a dark hallway. From sunrise to sunset, playtime to bedtime, our team is ready to take care of your electrical needs. Even in the case of an after-hours emergency, the light in your life shines brighter with Mr. Electric.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
best kept secret in town is out. Discover Tallulah at the Renaissance Hotel on Bluebonnet.
At Relief Windows, we're more than windows. We're windows, doors, party plank, and vinyl siding. But our number one product is always
on Thursday's OTB. Continue to break down Saints Falcons as well as the national championship and the latest from the now insane college football news cycle. Off the bench, 7 to 10 a.m., 104.5 ESPN.
Listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
That's a fast-moving show there. I guess that's what happens when you get a press release where 4 coaches got fired in the same day. We talked about it a ton in the first hour. If you missed any of it, you can find it at Hunt on LSU on YouTube or any places you find your on-demand audio. Look, it goes without saying that the next 2 weeks are just going to be massive for Brian Kelly in terms of creating his coaching staff. You know that most college coaches are done with their seasons. There are 2 teams left to play, and the NFL wraps up here on Sunday, and a lot of teams will have their coaches available to speak with you after they are eliminated from playoff contention. So you feel like Brian Kelly's probably got a list and a number of places he wants to go and people that he wants to call, and he's probably already started that, quite frankly. And so I think things are going to happen pretty quickly. So it's just so vital that he gets these right because, like I've talked about for the last 2 hours, it feels like LSU is so healthy on offense. And if you can catch up on defense, you create a real opportunity to compete for championships. And that's obviously Brian Kelly's goal since getting here. And it's easier to get in the playoffs now. You got to go 10-2, I believe. With LSU's schedule, if you go 10-2, I think you're in the playoff. Is it better if you go 11-1 or 12-0? Yeah. Home games, buys, the whole deal. But to get in and play for a championship, I think you got to go 10-2. Right now, it's hard for me to feel like LSU's defense is in 10-2 shape. It took the Heisman Trophy to will them to 9-3 this year. Now, that defense was awful, and they got to be better next year, but just got to keep pulling, and this was the first part of that. Now it's the hires that follow. And we'll certainly keep you posted as those happen here over the next, what I would say is 2 weeks. Excited to do that moving forward. All right, Mario, let's play some Take It or Leave It.
All right, first one. After the game the other night, Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy said the Wolverines did things the right way during the sign stealing scandal. Michigan doing things the right way. Take it or leave it.
I would have to probably leave it. I think J.J. McCarthy probably did things the right way. I think he probably went to work and showed up and practiced, and they played really well every Saturday. But there's a lot of smoke around that entire thing, and I think that's also another part of this Jim Harbaugh thing where there's just too many easy dots to connect that sends him to the Chargers. 1, he could win a national championship and accomplish everything he's wanted to do at Michigan. 2, he can go to a job in the NFL that doesn't require you to babysit 85 players all year and go recruit your own roster and recruit high schools and recruit the transfer portal and deal with the NIL stuff and run camps and do everything you got to do in college. You can go to the NFL, scout the draft, and coach the team. 3, you have all these allegations circling around about whether or not he could be penalized. There's too much. He played at San Diego. There's just too much that would suggest that this is going to be it for Jim Harbaugh, and we'll see if that affects LSU in any way, whether that's the head coach or maybe a defensive coordinator who could be available.
All right, moving on to the NFL. Joe Flacco has led the Browns to the playoffs. He has won a lot of people their fantasy league. He's been so good that the Browns have clinched the 5th seed in the AFC. They're actually resting him this weekend, and Jeff Driscoll will get the start. A Joe Flacco playoff run in the year 2023. Take it or leave it.
It's hard for me to get to the question when I realize Jeff Driscoll's in the NFL?
Yeah.
From Florida to Louisiana Tech to the league for multiple years? I am unaware. Deep playoff run for Joe Flacco. I will take it.
All right.
I'll take it.
Good defense the Browns have, maybe the best in the league. He's playing pretty good. Depends on when they play Baltimore, who's really, really good. But the Chiefs are gettable at this point. Do I totally trust the Dolphins? I don't know. Is Buffalo infallible? So, yeah, I think it's possible. I think that's a fun little story to think about. So, sure, why not?
I'm old enough to remember the College Game Day feature where Jeff Driscoll was supposed to be the next Tim Tebow. Like, they really tried to make that a thing.
No,
on to the NBA. The Pelicans are rolling along.
Yeah.
Got a big win over the reeling Nets last night. They're at Minnesota tonight. The Timberwolves currently the number 1 seed in the West. The Pels will get a road win. They're 4th in a row. Take it or leave it.
I'm going to leave that one. Good performance last night against a bad team. Cam Thomas wasn't very good last night either. But I was at Pluckers when that game ended. It ended at like 9:30. And then you feel like they got to shower, get to the airport, fly from New Orleans to Minneapolis, whenever that takes. And then you got to play that night. That doesn't feel great to me against the best team in the conference. So I hope they win. I think they can win. If they play the way they've been playing for the last 3 weeks, they'll be in the game. But Minnesota's good, back-to-back. Who knows if Zion even plays on a back-to-back? I got to go with Minnesota there.
Yes, nice to see Jordan Hawkins finally getting minutes.
Yes.
Even though it's just because Trey Murphy's injured. But that's a story for another day.
Yes.
New Year's resolutions here in the new year. Take it or leave it.
I'll take it if that's something you want to get into. I'm all about it. If that gets you in the gym or maybe doing a little bit better at the kitchen table, that gets you doing something that is a positive for you, that's great. I don't have a New Year's resolution. I'm just kind of rolling into the new year. I'm for them. I don't know how long people keep them. Has anyone in this room ever kept a New Year's resolution for more than like 3 weeks?
No, not really. To be honest with you, I feel like my New Year's resolution the last like 3 years has been not procrastinate as much. So
and
we'll see
how's that going? You're still working on that?
So far, so good.
Okay.
But it's only January 3rd. So
it's only January 3rd. We're still doing very well. All right. Well, that's I think I've had some New Year's resolutions. I probably started running, but it doesn't stick. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I'm with you. Last one. David Tepper was fined $300,000 for throwing a drink at a fan on Sunday. Tepper is bad news for the Panthers, being their owner. Take it or leave it.
I got to take this right now. If he's the one making draft picks and he's the one firing coaches halfway into 2 different seasons and he's the one that's throwing drinks at fans, David, your team stinks. What did you think that was going to happen when you showed up? You thought they were going to win? They never win. They're the worst team in the league. How could you be that emotionally invested? If they lose the NFC Championship game, maybe you can hurl a Pepsi, but let's calm down a little bit. With your team, it's awful. You fired your coach. I don't know what he thinks he's doing. I'm a big ownership guy. Charlie Hannegriff is the biggest ownership guy, and I'm with him there. And I want my MLB owner to be filthy rich and aggressive. I would feel really comfortable if I was a New York Mets fan or a Los Angeles Dodgers fan because they are spending money like crazy. And that's what I think is important in baseball, although the Mets and the Padres stunk last year. In the NFL, that's not as important because you got a salary cap. You need them to spend money to pay bonuses, to pay coaches. You need them to spend money on facilities and treating their players very well so you get a quality reputation around the league and players want to come play for you. But being the richest guy in the room doesn't help you as much as an NFL owner. You've got to be emotionally stable and make quality decisions and surround yourself with good people. And David Tepper has shown no ability to do any of that. All he does is throw tantrums, fire coaches, get in front of the media, make bad decisions, over-meddle with things. No. If he wants to go around with the general manager and meet Bryce Young and meet C.J. Stroud and meet these guys before the draft and just be supportive, that's great. You tell the general manager, we're taking Bryce Young, you're a clown. Go manage the hedge fund. You don't know how to run a football team. And then throwing drinks is just the cherry on top. I have no ill will towards the Carolina Panthers. I know that a lot of Saints fans do because it's a division team. I'm just looking at this guy from afar going, what are you doing? It's off the hinges. That's it for Take It or Leave It with David Tepper. Just a massive, massive news day here in Baton Rouge. One that certainly didn't take everyone by shock, but the way that it went down, I got that press release and it came to my phone and I looked at it and I saw a message from Brian Kelly and I said, oh, that'll probably be Matt House. And then I started reading and I was like, oh, this is everybody. So it's a huge day in Baton Rouge and certainly a signal of a totally new direction on the defensive side of the ball. We talked about it for the first 15 minutes of the show today. You can go back and catch that on demand, 1045ESPN.com's on demand tab Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. Wherever you find your audio, you can find it, as well as Hunt on LSU, our LSU YouTube channel. Appreciate y'all for hanging out in the Bayou Ford chat today. Throw us a like on your way out if you would. Had some really, really good numbers on YouTube today. As you would expect, a little controversy, a little turmoil. That'll bring the folks in. We appreciate you hanging out. J.D. Piquel was with us at 1:15. He gave his 2 cents on the LSU defense, defensive coaching hires, as well as the national semifinals and the national final to come. It was a What If Wednesday. One of the what ifs, what if LSU had Texas A&M or Texas's money? One of them was what if LSU had kept Corey Raymond? We got into all of that. Harlan Berry makes his decision tonight. We'll be reacting to that tomorrow on the show. Glenn West of Go 24/7 was with us in hour number 2. We talked a little Saints with Brian Bresee. If you're looking for that, you're looking for some Saints content, Hunt on Saints is where you can find that little conversation. Plus, my conversation about LSU's wide receivers. That's it for us here on this Wednesday. Matt Moscona is about to drive you home. Boy, does he have some content to get to from 3 to 6, so hang out with him. We're back tomorrow for our Thursday show presented by Rouse's. Have a good Wednesday, everybody.
The Windsor Senior Living Community in Mandeville, Louisiana is a beautiful, vibrant apartment community geared towards seniors. They are nestled right in the heart of Mandeville, where seniors live a more carefree lifestyle in spacious apartments with the peace of mind that comes from having a little extra help. Call the Windsor at 985-624-8040 to schedule a lunch and tour. Come see how the Windsor can be your passport to peace of mind.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary, for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you